Now to our first conversation. As inflation continues to bite globally, indications are emerging that prices of chicken and other poultry products might soon go beyond the reach of average Nigerians as farmers are struggling to break through. A crate of egg previously sold between 500 and 750 naira is currently tilting towards between 2,500 and 3,000 naira, forcing many to abandon egg consumption. And globally, we know the significance of eggs at Easter. Well, joining me now is the chairman of the Poultry Association of Nigeria, Ogun State, Mr. Ido Ashenuga, joining me right here in the studio. Good morning. Great to have you.
Good morning, Laddie. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning.
So quite a lot, happening in your industry, at this time, and it looks like, with rising prices. Because I remember, a few years back, I used to buy a crate of egg for about 700 naira, but now it's, gone haywire, at this time. What would you say is, driving prices, and how is demand looking?
Yeah, thank you very much, Laddie. Actually, contrary to your opinion, right now demand has dipped. Okay, no thanks to the redesign policy of the CBN. But then talking about the causes of the high prices, which of course was the situation, in January this year before the currency crisis, crept in. Well, unfortunately, CBN has disrupted our business twice in the last 3 years. I can recall in year 2020, just right during COVID, they banned the importation of maize, which for me personally is a terrible decision to make. Because as of then, when I talked to the Statistician General of Nigeria, he told me they were not ever even consulted. So there's a gap between the monetary policy and the fiscal policy in Nigeria, and it has not helped our business in any way. Price of maize as of 2020 was about 90,000 per ton. When they, put a ban on importation, it went to about 250,000. And maize is about 50% of our input. And right now that we are about recovering from that disruption that was caused in 2020, there comes the currency redesign. And poultry contributes about 25% to the agricultural GDP, which contributes about 25% to the country's GDP. So when you look at it in perspective, the poultry sector is contributing about 6% to Nigeria's GDP. And I'm wondering why any government should talk with such a sector.
And obviously, with the redesign policy, the CBN did have, plans to, try and bring down inflation, and terrorism and all of that. But, with how it's affecting, your industry, we have other payment channels. Weren't you able to explore those channels?
Well, you need to understand that Nigeria informal sector is still driven by cash. Even in America, as advanced as they are, they still use cash. When I go to the US, I spend cash. So at the retail end, okay, and about 90% of our product is sold by the, peasant retailer on the streets, at the corner of the streets. So they don't do POS. They don't even know how to operate it. Some of them don't even have bank accounts. So if you're buying 6 pieces of eggs, for instance, you're going to use cash. If you're buying even a tray, you're going to use cash. So the informal sector, where our business marketing is, domicile, is driven by cash. So even Nigerians that could afford to buy eggs, some months ago, they didn't have the cash. We were almost at zero cash availability in February and the takeoff in March before the Supreme Court judgment that forced the CBN to reverse their policy. So these has created a glut, in our business. And right now we have about 15 million trays of eggs, stockpiled with farmers that they can't just sell.
And what would you say is the way forward with this now? Because a glut that's huge, having that much eggs,
absolutely,
not being able to sell at this point. And it looks like it's more of the cash policy, the cashless policy, that's affecting your business more than lowering demand.
Absolutely. It is simply, the peak of our business traditionally is January, February, and March. Okay, but then this year, the disruption came, and then while we were trying to enjoy that good pricing, everything dipped. If somebody came to my farm yesterday and wanted to buy a tray of egg for 1,300. And then don't forget that in Nigeria, unfortunately, there's no price control. So the retailers still remains like the gatekeepers, because you as the consumer, you're still buying one egg for 100 naira. Even the reduction at the farm gate is not translating to the consumers. That's the unfortunate part. And then they are not being able to sell to the consumers. They can't come back to the producers to buy, and then we have the stockpile. All thanks to my senator, who, of course, I cried to, Ogun State, that took me to the governor some few weeks ago, and then he decided to mop up about 10,000. But we're still begging him to do more, because 10,000 from 15 million trays is a drop in the ocean.
Well, I see the same thing is happening in, I think, Plateau State. And,
absolutely. It's all over the country. Okay, you see, poultry is the most sophisticated part of agribusiness in Nigeria, and is the most efficient. Okay, like if you go all across the world, I'm using the same technology that is used in Europe. We are highly efficient in the poultry sector, and Nigeria should take pride because we are the largest egg-producing country in Africa, and we're the second in chicken. So this is a sector where the country is currently doing well, and I think the federal government needs to focus on. On Tuesday, we were still with the Minister of Agriculture, who promised to reach out to Mr. President to see how they can give us a quick bailout. Because if this is not done, the impact is going to be very significant. Let me put it into perspective. What we're talking about here, if you look at the value chain of the poultry sector in Nigeria, it runs into multi-trillions of naira. Okay, when I put it into perspective, just take the service side. The maize producer, they produce about 11 to 12 million metric tons of maize. We consume about 50 to 60% of that production, which puts us at about 6 million tons per annum. If you look at the logistics that is needed to move this commodity around the country into the feed mills and the poultry farms, you're talking about 200,000 trucks. And then when you put it at about 600,000 per truck, you're talking about 120 billion naira. Those guys are going to lose jobs. Some of the small players are already going out of the business. There's going to be huge level of unemployment. When you look at the value chain, as I'm speaking to you now, the archery sector of the value chain is being impacted. Day-old chicks that used to go for 700 naira is about 250 naira. And once they go down, we are still going to go down with them. So, and unfortunately, our business is such that you can't stop production. If I'm producing Coca-Cola, I can decide to shut down my factory and wait for when times get better. But in poultry, we're talking about life. My chickens, they need to eat.
Because you still need to keep feeding.
Absolutely. They need to eat every day, and they're going to give you eggs every day, which you need to sell. So the smallholder farmers are getting out of business because the eggs they produce, they've been unable to sell, and they need the cash to buy feed, to feed their chicken. So we're talking about hundreds of thousands of losses in jobs.
And talking about not being able to sell at this time, because we know the impact of lowering demand when it comes to price. Price normally comes down, but at the same time, you guys don't want to sell that cheap, and even if you try to bring the price down,
Laddie,
the demand is still.
I just told you somebody wanted to buy 1,300. This is something I was selling 2,100 in January. And then the person wants to buy for 1,003.
Are you ready to sell?
Absolutely. If I don't, it goes to waste. It's perishable. Our situation is very pathetic. And I'm saddened that government is not really listening, because we've been crying for the past weeks. But the federal government is not listening. And then we expect that, talking about the Nigeria investment, social investment program, which of course I saw in the dailies that they budgeted $800 million for that. What they need to give to the industry, to salvage this industry that is providing employment, providing food security to Nigerians, with 30 billion naira, we will be talking about significant intervention. Because we have 15 million trays that is unsold. If they buy at 2,000 naira, that's just 30 billion. That's what we're talking about to save this industry that is multi-trillion. Because if they don't save us, there's a ripple effect. Farmers are selling their layers that are not even mature for sales as we speak. What that is going to imply is that 2-3 months down the line, there will be no eggs. And Nigeria's rating as the #1 egg producing country in Africa might dip.
And there's also that issue of the avian influenza. How's that looking at this time?
Well, you see, the problem plaguing the poultry industry is huge. Okay, we're still with the chief veterinary officer on Tuesday as well, because when we left the minister, we paid a courtesy visit to him. These are issues that they need to bring us to the table, and then we need to all engage and see. If you check in January, there was scarcity of eggs even in the United States. because of avian influenza. So these are things we need to look at strategically as a country and then see how we can maneuver our way through to still ensure that we remain in business.
And definitely, we know the government is, struggling with revenue, at this time. And, we've seen some state governors, trying to intervene with, the glut in Plateau State. And you did mention Ogun State also. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the government intervening, what else do you have?
Well, the only option is for us to close shop. Ladi, it will amaze you that, for instance, my business is in the second generation. Okay, my father started in 1981. People like myself that has over 40 years experience, very few of us in the industry. For the first time, I contemplated closing business. Okay, and for me, if I have to get back, I would need nothing less than 300 million to even get back. So once you get out of the business, the possibility of you coming back is very slim. And then I anchor almost the livelihood of about 5 villages that are around my business. Okay, I intervene in terms of electricity, water. I give the school children eggs every Tuesday. That's what we, and I give the elderly people stipend every month. So in a business like mine, I provide employment to the youths in that community. So if someone like me goes down, the livelihood of that community goes down with it. That's what we're talking about here.
I know the central bank, has intervened a lot in the agricultural sector. What kind of conversations, are you having with the central bank?
Well, like even yesterday, I called my bankers and I had to tell them that because I've defaulted in my repayment to my bankers for February and March, which of course that was the only option I had. And when I even had a meeting with them, the only thing they could do was to give me more funds. But these funds are going down the drain, and they are very unnecessary in the first place because I didn't need those funds. I was paying my monthly repayment as I went due before the redesign crisis. What I'm going to tell the CBN, if they don't do something drastically and immediately, they should be expecting lawsuits, because you can't borrow me money and then you disrupt my business and I'm unable to pay back as a result of your disruption, and you still want to take me on that. They should be expecting litigations from our members all across the country.
Yeah,
because this is no fault of ours. When we went to the minister was helpless. When I went to my governor, my governor was helpless because these are no fault of theirs. This is principally a failure in monetary policy, and everything stops with the federal government and CBN.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone has been affected by, the currency redesign at this time.
But we are dying.
I guess your industry is heavily hit. But I guess we'll keep the conversation going. It's an ongoing one. Definitely, we're expecting some kind of miracle for your industry at this point. Because look, the picture you painted is quite dire.
Yeah, it is a disaster, to be honest.
All right, thank you so much,
Mr.
Idowu Osenuga, Chairman, Poultry Association of Nigeria, Ogun State, and compliments of the season.
Thank you.
All right, so